Digital economy, communication, technology, customer community, network, social media. VMC, the Vascellari media channel.
Sort of start point, and you're going up the height curve like that, and then you end up down here, which is where we are in a lot of this technology at the moment, and that's called the Trough of Disillusionment.
Aha.
Okay? In other words, we've become fed up with it. For one reason or another, or it doesn't work. And then here is what's called mainstream adoption. Mainstream adoption, okay? Which is when everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's what I'm seeing now.
What you're seeing right now is a lot of this, okay?
Yeah.
Now what most of us in this room, I would suggest, are doing, where most of us are, and it will not be in relation to blogs or wikis or any of that, is we're probably somewhere around here, anywhere along that axis, because we're into shiny new toys and widgets.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know, social media, for example, at the moment, this is roughly where Gartner sees it. Okay, that's roughly where Gartner sees it. It's somewhere going down that way. And if you look along here, I can almost guarantee that most people in this room will not know what's on that area, but there are things like prediction markets, which you're effectively talking about with the stuff that you're looking at. Those things are much more interesting than the stuff that's in and around here, but it's a hell of a lot more complicated as well. So, but this is, you have to understand what's going on here. Now, you know, at the moment, the world and its dog's talking about Twitter, right?
Well, the world isn't talking about Twitter. A lot of people in this industry
excuse me,
talk about
Silicon Valley bubble is
okay,
talking about Twitter, right?
Twitter,
And if you listen to Scoble, and if you listen to Gilmore, and if you listen to a few other people, you would think that the only thing that matters is Twitter. Right?
And friend feed.
Or friend feed, okay? But
people listen to Scoble anymore?
That's on the record. I will go on the record as saying that Scoble is an idiot, except at one
So I'm recording it.
except at one thing, and that is marketing Scoble. Now, some people think that makes him a great marketer. I thoroughly disagree.
But that's personal branding.
He's a personal brand guy.
Yeah,
Okay.
someone might
Anyhow,
say in the public
all right.
leads,
but I can tell you that I can tell you that stood in front of 6,000 developers and mentioning Twitter got an absolute blank stare from 95% of the audience.
Yeah.
So, you know, we may be thinking about it up here somewhere. They're over here somewhere, right?
Yeah.
That's where they are, right? But it's really important to understand where a lot of this stuff is because ultimately, if we're all connected with IT in some way or other, and this is a model that's actually pretty darn good, works for most things, is that we're in the fashion business.
In the what business?
We're in the fashion business.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, the other bit, looking at it.
So where do you make money in that curve?
Oh, that's a good question.
Where you make money in that curve is in two places. Here, round about here, and funny enough, you can make a lot of money there. And the reason that you can make a lot of money there is because you can sort through the wheat and the chaff. Because if you've been working in this environment for more than a couple of years, then you know what works and doesn't work. Okay? And you can help solve people's problems here. By the time it gets here, everybody's problems have been solved.
Yeah, I mean, using that model, I think one of the other things, if you really are an expert and you're at the leading edge of something, one of the important things is not to get bored in the long time it takes for the rest of the world to catch up.
I don't get bored making money.
I think, but I think if people are actually, sometimes the message that you might need to simplify it massively. You need to take it down a level to get people's attention, and going on doing the same thing for a couple of years, long after the Silicon Valley bubble's moved on to something more interesting, could be a pretty hard slog. I think there's actually weird individuals can go over that height curve just like everyone else.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Sorry, I was going to sorry to hijack this thing, but I can tell you that I never get bored making money. Never.
I do.
Well, that's unfortunate. and my real area of expertise when I'm writing about stuff is good old-fashioned ERP, which we've been writing about since 1989, and we're still writing about it. And people say to me, "Oh, boring enterprise." You know, unfortunately, Boring Enterprise pays me a lot of damn money. Startups don't, sorry.
I
Anyway.
mean, Clay Shirky gave a talk about his new book, the name of which I forgot.
Here Comes Everybody.
Here Comes Everybody, that's it. And someone asked a question about, you know, what do you think is the next big technology to come through? And his answer was email. He said, you know, technology doesn't get interesting until it's ubiquitous. And actually, I'm kind of refocusing away from new and shiny into old and broken, and how can we fix the old and broken. And I think email is very broken. But I think that it is, for myself, it's actually quite difficult for me to stay interested in stuff. I've been through that trough of disillusionment with the whole thing myself, and it's kind of like coming out of the other side and figuring out how I can continue to work in the same area without going completely bonkers doing the same thing over and over again and explaining the same things over again to just different people who still aren't listening, and the same way that they weren't listening 3 years ago. And I think, you know, it really is a fashion industry, and it really is important to be aware of where you are in your own emotional sort of cycle and your reaction to how all this goes, and understanding how people react to specific terms is also important. And I have kind of realised now that the social in itself is a really problematic word, and that I just need to stop using it.
I try. I've now switched to telling people when they ask me what I do. So, you know, I help people understand the stuff that's on the internet and use it better. I've tried to switch the most general way of describing what I do, because that'll stay.
It's like, what do you say at customs when you go to America and they ask you what your job is?
Oh my God.
You're going through immigration,
Well,
and
the
the guy
time before
says,
last I said I'm a freelancer, and I was going there for 5 weeks, and I said, in the internet stuff. and I thought, that sounds really, really bad. And I said, well, actually, I'm going to San Francisco to work on a book project. And then I got drilled for 10 minutes about the contents of the book by the customs officer. So
to answer your question, whenever you go to America, unless you've got an H1 in the back of your passport, you are never a journalist, you're never a writer. You're an IT consultant attending a conference.
yeah.
an
Oh, yeah.
IT consultant.
Attending a conference.
So a couple of years ago in Switzerland, I was going around saying, you know, this is what a blog is, this is how it works, this is how it can be interesting for your business or association or non-profit or whatever. And people went, oh yeah, very interesting, but you know, we don't want a personal journal on our site, or we're not that interested, or we're not ready for that. And over this last month, I have at least 3 people in my immediate surroundings who've told me that they've just started a blog at their work. Virginie is one of them, without asking anybody. They've just started a blog, or started using, you know, shared calendars or stuff like that, and the hierarchy's been very happy with it. And I've got the impression that, at least in my little circle in Lausanne, things are starting to go mainstream as far as putting a blog on your website is concerned. It's suddenly, people are starting to think it's a reasonably normal thing to do.
Well, I think the thing to remember is that this hype cycle, there are, the hype cycle is replicated in different communities and different companies and different people.
Yeah.
So you've got a whole kind of bunch of them running. So, you know, there will always be people who go, oh my God, blogs, they're amazing.
Yeah.
But then you've got people going, oh my God, the internet, it's amazing.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, it's all well and good kind of, you know, thinking about the hype cycle being over, but it's only over for a certain set of people.
You're
for
right.
other people, they're at the beginning of it. And it's a matter of figuring out in your community where you're at, the people that you're trying to communicate to, where are they at? Are they kind of just ramping up the big mountain, or are they in the trough of disillusionment, kind of thinking it's all a load of rubbish? And until you understand exactly where they are, it's difficult to understand how to communicate with them in a way that will mean something to them.